One of the most important things when you're playing a blues solo is development. So you want to develop your ideas. And typically you'll develop ideas in one zone of the fretboard you're comfortable, but eventually you run out of ideas. So you're moving on to another zone of the fretboard. And that's where a lot of players run into issues because the transition from one zone of the fretboard to the next is just not smooth and your whole improvisation just falls apart. By the end of this video, you're going to be able to transition from one zone of the fretboard to the next in a very musical way. Make sure you have your guitar with you. I would love for you to try these with me. If you're a first time or a long time visitor, welcome. My name is David Wallimann. This channel is all about helping you express yourself on the guitar a little bit better. And we do that through various concepts that I have encountered in my 30+ years of teaching guitar. Really quick, in the description of this video, you're gonna find a link that will take you to a free blues workshop. In that workshop, you're gonna learn the right notes you should target, how to escape sounding redundant, and much, much more. Again, it's completely free and the link is in the description of this video. We're gonna work in A today. Here's our backing track. A minor pentatonic is gonna work throughout the whole track. And we're gonna learn how to transition from one zone of the fretboard to the next. Let's say that we are hanging out in this area of the fretboard. That's the first position of the minor pentatonic scale. And after a while, you feel kind of, you're starting to repeat yourself. So you wanna move on to another zone of the fretboard. Maybe this one right here. That zone is not randomly selected. See, when you're playing the guitar, you want to have visual reference points. That explains why most of us play with that first position of the minor pentatonic scale, because that visual reference point, the root of the scale, which is in this case A, is the very first note that your eyes lay on. When you're looking at your fretboard, the first string you see is the low E string, and you just find that A, and here it is. That's your visual reference point. Very easy. The first note you find is the first note of the scale, and that's why we spend most of our time in that position. Now, there are other visual reference points, and the one we're going to focus on is found on the 5th string. So if we're in A, we started with this visual reference point, low E string, 5th fret. The next one is going to be on the 5th string, 12th fret. Now you might say, well, that's also the open string. Now there's a reason why we're not using the open string. That's because from each of these two visual reference points, we can build two scales, two positions, two pentatonic scales. One is going to happen on the left side and the other one on the right side. It just helps us cover a little bit more ground. So from that visual reference point, we have this position and this one. And from that visual reference point, we have this position and that one. I'm going to show you 3 ways you can do that. The first one is very safe. It's always going to sound good because we're going to use the minor pentatonic scale, same exact scale, but we're going to lay down the notes of that minor pentatonic scale in a horizontal way. That shape requires 2 fingers, the index and the ring. Our index is not going to start with the root of the scale. It's going to start 2 frets below. So if our root is on the low E string 5th fret, that index is going to be placed 2 frets below on the 3rd fret. Index, ring, that falls naturally on frets 3, 5. Then on the next string, which is the 5th string, we will also do index ring, so frets 3, 5, and that ring finger is going to slide 2 frets higher to the 7th fret. That's it. We've got a series of 5 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those notes are found in the A minor pentatonic scale. Once we have that, we just repeat the same exact process an octave higher, and we're starting to make our way to the 2nd zone. We're almost there. We need to repeat this exact same shape, this time on strings 2 and 1. And because of the way the guitar is tuned, there's a little shift here. So instead of going to what you might expect, which is the 7th fret of the 2nd string, we're going to go to the 8th. It's just because of the way the guitar is tuned. And then we're going to repeat that shape. And we're landing here on the 1st string, 12th fret, and that happens to be the zone of the fretboard we want to land in. And from there, we can play all the ideas that are in that zone of the fretboard. This is how it works. Let's say we're in that zone of the fretboard, first position of the minor pentatonic scale. You're running out of ideas, so you want to develop things in that zone of the fretboard. We're going to transition. Okay, there are two other ways I'm going to show you. Now we're getting into a little tricky territory, little outsidey. It's going to add an outside flavor. These shapes are very easy to remember, but there's a little bit of danger because some of the notes are completely outside and they're going to sound really wrong. In order to make notes that are wrong sound right, you need to use the right groove. It's all about the groove. So backing track, these notes are perfect. But if I play these notes 1 fret higher, oh my gosh, that is horrible. But if I add the right groove, and if I don't hang out on these wrong notes too long, it sounds a little better. So that's the approach. All right, let me show you these two other paths that you can take. Here's my visual reference point, low E string, 5th fret. And from that visual point, we're gonna build a major triad. And here's the twist. Once we play that major triad, we're gonna play another major triad, but this time we're gonna start it a tritone above the root, which is 1 fret lower that note we just landed on. And we're just gonna keep doing that until we ascend the full scale, creating a sense of inside notes and outside notes. If you overdo it, it's not gonna sound great. But if you use it with that rhythm thing that I was telling you, a strong sense of rhythm, so as you're listening to the track, you're going to think of rhythm motifs. Things like that, that's gonna help. And also, start it where the turnaround is gonna be. It's always gonna sound good because the turnaround, which we're getting into in a second, is meant to add a little bit of tension and then get back into the turn around, starting over. Is the turnaround, tension, 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 and in. I'm gonna try to demonstrate that. So I'm gonna start with my minor pentatonic scale in that zone of the fretboard. Let me show you another one. This one also works in a very similar way that we use that arpeggio extracted from the whole tone, in the sense that there are some wrong notes in there, so use it to your own discretion. Start with the index on the root, a half step above, it's 1 fret, a full step above, 2 frets, a half step above, half step. It's symmetrical in the sense that it's going to be a series of half steps, whole steps, half steps, whole steps. There's a repetitive pattern here. So those are the first 4 notes. Frets 5, 6, 8, 9. That's the shape that we're going to use. So fingering wise, there's many possible options, but what I like to do, what is natural to me, is to use the index, middle, pinky, and I'll slide my pinky right here. Then I'm going to repeat the same exact fingering, but this time on the next string, so 5th string, 1 fret higher than where I started, which is going to be the 6th fret. 1 fret higher than where I started, which is the 7th fret. Again, same thing here. Then we're going to do 2 frets higher than where I started, and 1 fret higher. And where do I land? Right where I want to be in that zone of the fretboard. Let's hear that in context. I'll start right here, this zone of the fretboard. The goal is to transition musically, if we can, to this one using that diminished arpeggio. I'll do that on the turnaround. Notice that I didn't use the full arpeggio. Just little pieces are enough. The idea is just to smoothly transition from one area of the fretboard to the next without the listener feeling that you are jumping, because that creates an improv that is just not very coherent. Remember, you're bringing the listener into your story, and that's really the goal. Now, speaking of your story, there's one thing you can do. There's actually a couple things you can do, and that has to do with the chord changes. When you're hearing a chord change, just click here. And that's the full workshop. It'll teach you exactly what to do. It's the same workshop I told you at the beginning of this video. I covered it all in here. I'm just not gonna have time here. It's free. Check it out. I'll see you in the workshop.